Recent data on the global climate crisis has raised alarm on a particular region. The Mediterranean basin is warming 1.5 times faster than the global average. That impact was evident as several Mediterranean countries battled record high temperatures and raging wildfires this year. Many of the areas affected included popular tourist destinations, a major economic driver in the region that millions depend on. Home to more than 500 million people and over a dozen countries, the Mediterranean basin has seen sharp increases in extreme weather patterns from floods, droughts, and wildfires. This year has been the hottest summer on record, with the region sweltering through temperatures above 45 degrees Celsius. Turkey has been especially affected, where new data shows that the country is at risk of extreme overheating. Forest fires ravage large parts of southern Turkey, as well as Greece, Italy, Spain, and Algeria. To combat the rising heat, Turkey is planning to double its reduction targets in its roadmap to reach net zero emissions by 2053. And now to further discuss the rapid warming of the Mediterranean basin and its effects on the region. Joining me now from Southampton, the UK, is Simon Boxall. He is the Principal Teaching Fellow at University of Southampton. Simon, thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk. So scientists say the Mediterranean basin is warming faster than the global average. How alarming is this, given that how many people live in this region?
I think it's very alarming. And, as climate scientists, we've been saying all along that we talk about climate change rather than global warming. The globe is warming up. We've measured the sea. The sea has warmed up by between 1.5 and 2 degrees over the last 80 years. And that doesn't sound very much, but it's a huge amount of energy. But I think more important than that is the fact that that warming, that heating, isn't even. We can't just say that every part of the ocean or every part of the planet will warm up by about the same amount. And now I was looking at the temperature maps for this week off the coast of Turkey, off our own coast. I was out on the water yesterday. Yesterday, the water temperature in Southampton water was 18.5 degrees. That's 4 degrees warmer than it should be this time of year in October. And looking at the temperatures, looking at sea surface temperatures from satellite over the last few days around Turkey, then Turkey has been between about 1 and 3 degrees warmer than it should be for this time of year, based on the last 20 years. And that includes some of this warming. So it is alarming. Yes. Then there are other areas, for example, if you look at the coast of Libya, it's actually cooler by a degree. But we've always known that this sort of band, this sort of temperate band, this band that has seen the civilization of the planet grow, is getting warmer and drier. And this is the big problem.
But why are temperatures in the Mediterranean basin rising faster than other regions? I mean, is there any particular reason behind this?
No, all we do know is that the temperate regions of the planet are moving north and south, so they're moving away from the equator. If you like, that sort of Saharan effect is shifting north in the northern hemisphere, shifting south in the southern hemisphere. And we've been aware that over the next 100 years, we're going to see quite a big migration of people north and south, simply because there's not enough water, the temperatures are too high, you're going to start to see the loss of farmland, fisheries. All these things are going to be affected over the next 100 years.
So this year, as you've mentioned briefly, the Mediterranean sea surface saw the highest ever recorded temperature at 28.7 degrees. What impact will this have on the marine life in those waters?
It has two effects. Most animals and plants in the ocean have a range over which they're comfortable, a bit like humans, really. And so we will see a migration of those plants and animals away from those regions. Now, the Mediterranean is not very far for them to go. It's not like in the open Atlantic where they can migrate north. And we've seen that happen. We've seen many species, things like cod, move north in the Atlantic towards Iceland. In the Mediterranean, they're a bit more restricted. They can't move out of the Mediterranean. And so we are going to see a reduction in the numbers. We may see new species, maybe some sadly invasive species, which has another negative impact. Not all species will be affected. So it's going to be a very mixed bag of how things will change over the course of the next 50 years, let's say.
So, Simon, how would these figures add to the already strained, vulnerable economies across the region?
It will have a big effect. And we're not just looking at impact on economies around Turkey. We're looking at impact economies across the globe. Sure. because it's a global problem, and we need to solve this problem as a globe. We're seeing at the moment all kinds of fractions and issues all over the world at the moment, and we need to resolve those because we're going to have to work together as a planet and as humanity, really, because we have to work together and help each other.
You say it's a global problem, but on a local level, how will this change or impact the vital industries such as tourism and agriculture, which Turkey and many other nations depend on?
Well, we're seeing, if you look at the report that's come out of Turkey, and it's a very good report, it's backed up by some really good science. And the models show that not only would temperatures rise by 2 or 3 degrees Celsius, which doesn't sound much, but it's significant. More importantly, we'll see a change in rainfall patterns. We'll see extreme drought, followed by brief periods of extreme rainfall, sort of almost monsoonal type rain. And we've seen that along the Mediterranean coast now in France, Italy, and in Greece, in Turkey, and that's happening sort of across the area. And of course, those increased temperatures means that whereas tourists might flock in the past to beaches which are a sunny and glorious 30 degrees, 33 degrees, as they start to approach 40 degrees, they become uninhabitable. They become less popular. And so not only are you seeing a loss in tourism, you're also seeing a loss in agriculture.
So speaking of drought, how important has the management of water resources and agriculture become for the region, and what should be done to this end?
It's important to plan ahead, and I think there's no doubt that there needs to be quite intensive planning and input of quite significant funding, not just in the countries involved, but really it's a global problem to try and resolve the issues of irrigation to maintain a sensible level of agriculture. If we don't do that, and people might say, well, why should Germany, why should Britain, why should other countries around the world contribute to this to stop this happening? If we don't, we're going to see a huge migration of people. People have to eat, they have to have drinking water, they have to have a sustainable sort of lifestyle. And people will see a much bigger migration, not because of wars, not because of social impact, but because of sheer survival. People will start to migrate north and south, and that will have an impact on all the other countries in the world.
So is there any tangible initiative by regional countries to counter the negative effects of rising temperatures?
I think one of the things we do need to do is make sure we don't exasperate it further. We're looking at these models, making the assumption that we ease off on the amount of CO2, greenhouse gases that are pumped into the atmosphere. And so we are assuming, we're basing this on the sort of the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change figures, to say we will try and ease back, we will minimize the temperature rise by 2 degrees globally. Now, if we do that, we still have problems, and we need to cost in those problems. If we don't do that, if we don't limit that temperature change, we're looking at this arid zone, not just going sort of through Turkey, but going up through most of southern France, through Italy. This becomes a real global issue for life on Earth, for humankind.
So unless proper actions are taken, how would the Mediterranean climate change? I mean, will it become tropical or even drier?
We're going beyond tropical. I mean, it would be quite nice to think, many would think, great, tropical climate, it'll attract tourism, it'll be great for sort of growth. No, I think most of North Africa will become completely arid. We have just desert. And that desert will sort of creep slowly north across the Mediterranean. And, the models show that we are seeing the sort of pictures we're seeing at the moment. We're seeing a lot of forest fires, fires across the Mediterranean. And then we're seeing extremes during monsoon periods where we're seeing heavy rainfall. And it's very difficult for the members of the public, for non-scientists to go, well, hang on a minute. Are we warming? Are we cooling? You're saying on the one hand, we're getting droughts, but then we get these floods. And it's about these extremes of weather, these extremes of climate. And that makes it very difficult to sustain an economy around tourism and around farming.
All right, Simon, unfortunately, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk.